Good evening. The August 5th, 2026 regular meeting of the Planning Commission will come to order at 6:30 p.m. Please follow Commissioner Saikali for the Pledge of Allegiance and Commissioner Legaspi for the invocation. So please rise.
Please stand.
Did I put you on the spot?
That's fine.
Hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. We could all just stand and say a few words. Dear Lord, thank you for blessing us and for the opportunity to come together as a family, as a city, as a community. Thank you for blessing our staff, our commissioners, and our entire city and all of our residents. And God, we bless you. Thank you, God.
Amen. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for doing that. Let's see. May I have Planning Commission Secretary Rhea please call roll?
Commissioner Lujan?
Present.
Commissioner Guerra? Excused. Commissioner Legaspi?
Present.
Vice Chair Sakali?
Here.
And Chair Uva?
Present. Now is the time set aside for oral communications from Planning Commission. Does any commissioner wish to make an announcement, report a conference, a meeting, or request for a future agenda item? Anyone?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have none.
I have none.
And I have none. Presentations, we have none tonight. Does the Community Development Director have a report on a City Council action item or any other general update?
I have none tonight, Chair.
Great, thank you. Public hearings. Now is the time set aside for public hearing for PLN 26-00068 conditional use permit. Does the Planning Commission Secretary have proof of publication?
Yes, I do.
Great. Will the Community Development Director introduce the staff making our presentation tonight?
Yes, Chair. Tonight we'll have Marissa Montera, our Associate Planner, provide a brief presentation.
Good evening, Chair Uva, Vice Chair Saikali, Commissioners, and members of the audience. The item before you is PLN-26-00068 from a mathnasium at 9434A Firestone Boulevard. This is a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a tutoring center within an existing 1,570 square foot tenant space. Tutoring centers are permitted at this location with the approval of a conditional use permit. The commercial center comprises 3 parcels totaling 66,196 square feet and is developed with 3 buildings. The commercial center has 11 commercial tenant spaces consisting of neighborhood uses such as restaurant, nail salon, a massage establishment, barber and beauty salons, and offices. The proposed tutoring center will be located within the building on parcel C in a 1,570 square foot tenant space. The tenant space was previously occupied by an office. This is an image of the site with the existing tenant space from the parking area along Woodruff Avenue. The subject property is zoned C2, general commercial, with a corresponding general plan land use designation of general commercial. The proposed tutoring center is permitted in the C2 zone with the approval of a CUP and is consistent with the general plan. Surrounding the subject site are a variety of uses, including commercial to the north, the Lakewood Firestone specific plan to the west, commercial and multifamily residential to the east, and multifamily residential to the south. Mathnasium provides supplemental math instruction for students in grades K through 12. Students attend 1-hour sessions about 2 to 3 times a week. Sessions are scheduled so students arrive and leave in staggered intervals. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 2 to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It is expected that overall 80 to 120 students will be enrolled at the center. During the initial opening phase, approximately 8 to 15 students are anticipated on site at any given time. However, peak attendance is expected to be about 20 to 25 students. The applicant anticipates a total of 9 to 17 employees with 3 to 5 on site at any given time. The proposed floor plan includes a small reception area with a check-in desk and some seating, a tutoring area with tables and seating for tutors and students, an admin area for staff, a director's office, storage, and a restroom. And also on the screen is a rendering of a typical mathnasium layout. There are 94 parking spaces on site for all 11 tenants. The Downey Municipal Code does not specify a parking requirement for tutoring centers. Therefore, pursuant to DMC Section 9116, Interpretation of Regulations, staff determined that the required parking should be based on the personal services classification, given the nature of the tutoring center, its occupancy requirements, and typical attendance and land use patterns. The personal services parking requirement is 1 space per 300 square feet, which is the same standard that was applied to the previous office use. Therefore, there is no change in required parking. The Development Review Committee discussed and evaluated the project as it pertained to planning, police, fire, public works, and building and safety matters. All departments did not express concerns or opposition over the project and issued standard conditions of approval. Staff has reviewed the proposed project for compliance with CEQA and determined that the CUP is exempt from further review under CEQA Guidelines Section 15301. On July 23rd, the notice of the pending public hearing before the Planning Commission was published in the Downey Patriot and mailed to all tenants and property owners within 500 feet of the subject site. As of the publication of the date of this report, no correspondence has been received in response to the public hearing notice. Staff finds the proposed tutoring center to be an appropriate use at this location because the use is compatible with the existing commercial center, which accommodates a diverse mix of retail and service-oriented tenants. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution Number 26-4065, approving PLN-26-00068, thereby allowing the operation of a tutoring center located at 9434A Firestone Boulevard. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marissa.
Of course.
Do any of our commissioners have questions of staff?
Just one question.
Yes.
The rendering you mentioned, you showed us here earlier.
Yeah,
shows
yes.
one restroom, right? Just
Correct. One
Is it
restroom.
single-use type or obviously, right?
Yes, it appears to be a single stall, single use.
On that matter, is that restroom ADA compliant?
I believe it is when reviewed by the DRC, Building and Safety, typically provides input on whether or not the restrooms are ADA compliant. So yes, I believe it is.
Okay. And Mr. Legaspi?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Montero. Good job.
Of course, thank you.
So the previous use was office, just straight up office space?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Cindy Escrow.
Okay, it was an escrow operation. And this is just for the record, and I think I know the answer, but just so we could all be on the same page. Mm-hmm. If it was office and we're still using it pretty much for office, right? Mm-hmm. Why the need for it to come to planning?
Oh, correct. Good question. Yes. So currently in the Downey Municipal Code, tutoring centers are permitted in certain commercial zones with the approval of a conditional use permit. So at this point in time, we have to bring these types of uses to the Planning Commission.
Got it. Okay.
Chair Uva, to add additional context to the response, tutoring centers is one of the land uses slated for a zoning text amendment. in the next, probably I would say 10 months. By the direction of the city council, there's a list of uses, including tutoring centers, that the city council directed staff to prepare zoning text amendments to not require CUP, but instead require a minor conditional use permit, which would be at the staff level review. And that's in order to streamline reviews for businesses. So the length of time of review is significantly reduced. Given that we generally do not see or have not seen impacts generated by tutoring uses, that is one of the reasons that was recommended and directed to staff to lower the review threshold to a not a public hearing before the Planning Commission for future applications after the zoning text amendment is approved.
Thank you for that. And that's where my question was coming from. It's such a great use, and I think our community, our youth could use the tutoring and this type of locations. I would have wanted this to be approved a long time ago and not for the applicant to wait until today. So
Yes, of
thank you.
course.
Thank you for answering that question. Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you again for a great presentation. And is there going to be any remodel inside, or is this going to be just an open area with the tables the way that this photos are?
Yes, it will just be an open area with the director's office. All of that is already existing.
Okay.
I believe the only tenant improvements are flooring and, updating the space.
Okay. All right, well, we do appreciate it, because coming from education, definitely, we need that for a lot of our, community students here. So,
Yeah.
that's it.
Extra support is always
Definitely.
helpful. Yeah.
Wait, it's only for the youth? I wanted to sign up.
K through 12.
We
all could.
Okay, no more questions? Okay. Before I open the public hearing and call the applicant or the representative, this would be the time for the planning commissioners to disclose any pre-hearing site visits, pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about this project. We'll start this way.
I have none, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't have any.
And Mr. Second, none?
No, thank you.
And I have none either. I'm very familiar with the location. Okay, the public hearing is now open, okay? Will the applicant or their representative please come forward to give testimony?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and City staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Eunice. I'm the co-owner of Mathnasium of Downey. A little bit about Mathnasium of Downey. We're a supplemental educational institution where we support K through 12 students in helping building competence as well as strengthening their foundational skills. Our goal is to have our students to be able to have a genuine understanding of math and not just memorization. Our business operation entails where students arrive for 1-hour sessions, either after school or on weekends at their discretion. We operate in a quiet and professional environment to where we are compatible with the other commercial uses in our surrounding. The reason why we chose Downey is because it is a vibrant and family-oriented community with a strong commitment to education. We saw an opportunity to provide the local families with an additional resource for education, as well as partnering with the schools, and to overall make a positive and long-term contribution to the families of Downey. We are excited to open our doors here in the city, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Great, thank you so much. Does anyone have questions?
I have one. Just, do you have any other locations open?
Yes, so we have some franchises in other cities surrounding us. This is our first location that we'd be franchising, but the nearest locations would be in Pico Rivera as well as Lakewood.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. What level of the math are you going to be teaching?
So we range anywhere from K through 12, so that around from our highest would be about AP statistics to AP Calc, and our lowest being foundational math skills. So that's anywhere from children who are in TK, pre-K. We can always build those foundational skills, and that's the range of level that we'd be doing.
Just briefly discuss what are the subjects in math. Are we talking about coordinate geometry, arithmetic, algebra?
Sure. So some of the subjects include Algebra 1, Algebra 2. I know in some schools they have listed it differently since now with Common Core in place for a few years now. But we do anywhere from Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. We also have trigonometry, as well as logistics. So anywhere that's in the realm of logarithm, and that includes in AP Calculus and AP Statistics.
Wonderful. No pre-physics.
No pre-physics, unfortunately, no.
Thank you.
He's the math guy here, so if you need a tutor,
He's
on fire.
That's amazing.
I just have a silly question. So men or girls or boys, which one catch math best?
I think
No pressure, but
in general, I think everyone's open to learning. I know math is a difficult subject. I was also a student at Mathnasium at one of our other franchises for my high school period. And then once I went into college, I started teaching there at that center. And so it's been very rewarding. And I feel like no matter the gender, I feel like everybody has a different learning technique or learning style. It's just how we embrace them and how we are able to enrich them.
great answer.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for talking tonight. I had very similar questions, so they were already asked and answered, but just as a little aside, when I was in college, I had a roommate that was a math major, and she would always say that everything in life relates to math, and it's so true when you think about it. So thank you. That is all for us for right now for you, but thank you, and we'll go on with our agenda. We need to confirm that there has been any correspondence in opposition or in favor of this.
No correspondence.
No correspondence, great, okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? No, I don't. No one would like to speak, okay, great. So now we're going to close the public hearing. And I guess I should pound there. Now is the time for the Planning Commission to deliberate. What is the pleasure of the Planning Commission? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve PLN 26-00068.
And then
I'll
conditional
second.
use
Conditional use
permit.
permit, yes.
Got it.
I'll second.
Okay, perfect. Planning Commission Secretary Ria, may we have a vote?
Motion passes with a vote of 4-0.
Great. I need to remind the applicant that the action of the Planning Commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the City Council with the appropriate fee within the next 15-day period set forth by the municipal code. Congratulations. Okay, non-agenda public comment would be our next item on our agenda. I don't think there's anyone here to speak. Doesn't look like it, okay. Consent calendar, I think we have none tonight. Other business, there is one item under other business to receive and file a status report on the comprehensive general plan update. Will the Community Development Director introduce the staff member making the presentation?
Yes, Chair. Tonight I'd like to introduce our senior planner, Abraham Luna, who will be starting our presentation for the general plan update that's currently underway. This is the presentation that was slated to be provided by our staff and consultant team at the last meeting, but we ran out of time. So we've adjusted the presentation just slightly to make sure we provide the correct context for the timeline of steps to come after tonight's presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Abraham Luna. Thank you, Abraham.
Chair Uva and Commissioners, the presentation tonight is for the staff report for the ongoing comprehensive general plan update. As you know, this has been an important project for the city of Downey and the Plan Division since the current general plan has a horizon year of 2025. And before I provide a brief background, I want to acknowledge Irma for her leadership, and then also Swati, who's no longer with the City of Downey, but she was a big part of this general plan update for the guidance and for this project. The plan division for the contribution, and the other departments, including fire, police, public works, for the collaboration and preparing the important policy document. And lastly, our consultant team, MIG, who I will introduce shortly. So as of July 7th, the public review version of the general plan is available for the city on the city website and here at City Hall, with physical copies here and at other facilities. The draft includes updates to all elements except the housing element, which was adopted in October of 2022. These updates to the elements were based on feedback from the public gathered through the workshops, pop-up events that we did last year, and the online questionnaire. Public feedback can be submitted still to the Planning Division, and this is an important step in refining the document before we present it to the Planning Commission and Council for adoption later this year. And at the end of the presentation, there is a slide for the website and where to send comments for the public. So in addition to the amendments, the city also published a draft environmental impact report as of July 7th. The draft EIR is available for a 45 public review period ending on August 20th, 2026. And that's in accordance with CEQA requirements. The public review period allows the public, including other lead agencies, to provide feedback on the EIR document. So as a whole, this project has been part of a larger overall project that started in early 2021 when the city hired MIG to assist the city with the adoption of the housing element, implementation of the housing element, which eventually led to the creation of the objective design standards that apply to multifamily. And since then, the project has transformed into the preparation of a comprehensive general plan update, which includes updates to all the remaining elements and new elements that are mandated by the state law. So these updates also include changes to the zoning map to achieve consistency with the general plan and land use map. And finally, as previously mentioned, a draft EIR that was prepared to analyze any impacts associated with the general plan update. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jose Rodriguez, who's been a big part of this general plan update with MIG.
Well, good evening, Planning Commission, Chair Uva, members of the Planning Commission, city staff, and Abraham, thank you for that introduction. And Abraham has mentioned, we're actually excited at this phase of the general plan and to release a draft general plan and have public input. So let me just really go over the purpose of this particular meeting, the study session, and as we introduce the general plan, as well as the process and getting to the adoption period, adopting the general plan and making sure all this work gets codified and adopted. So I'm gonna go ahead and provide an overview of the general plan, the process, engagement that we've done, particularly how engagement has shaped the document. We've taken a lot of public feedback. There's been a lot of engagement activities, from surveys to pop-up events, and talk about how those shaped both the general plan, the mapping, and so forth. We want to talk about key general plan land use changes, the map itself, but not only just the map, there's also a lot of zoning map changes as well. So that's really in key, so we'll really just go into detail about those specific changes and consistency. And at the end, that path towards adoption, which we're getting very, very close to. So let's talk first about the general plan objectives. And this is again at a high level. If you review the document, the first chapter, the introduction, includes the vision, guiding principles, and it starts to outline this framework. And the framework, most importantly, is economic development, creating additional business opportunities, as we saw earlier, creating additional jobs, but importantly, as well as increasing tax revenue, meeting housing needs. Obviously, through the housing element, there's standards from the states and requirements, but there's still supply-demand needs from the community itself. Transportation under the circulation mobility element was also important in accommodating, looking at different mobility types, bicycle, transit, vehicles, truck routes, and so forth are all identified in the general plan. Evolving public service needs from schools to libraries and recreation and community services. And then I think most importantly is making sure future development reflects Downey's character, existing character now, and what that character is in the future. So that's still important. That's embodied in the general plan. But as we know, communities change over time. Downey was different many, many years ago. And every year, as many cities throughout California are continuing to evolve. What was once manufacturing for aerospace is now a great museum that's also expanding and excited. And just a quick side note, I'm excited because tomorrow is a general plan public workshop on reviewing the workshop, kind of more of an open house format, and we'll be at the Space Center. So it's a great opportunity to get feedback from the public on the general plan. But transportation as well also changes from vehicles. And vehicles, keep in mind, vehicles is still an important component, and we know it's still a high mobility mode, but there's definitely transit and bicycle opportunities that the city continues to evolve as the city evolves. Part of the general plan, as well as we updated the land use plan, was to take into account economic considerations. We had an economic consultant looked at the realistic projections for future types of land uses. We took that into account. And then as Abraham set up, this is the phase 3 part of the update of the work that we've been doing, from the housing element to housing element implementation to the complete general plan update. But really the two mapping components there on the right, on the left, were key things that we really worked with staff on and making sure that we had an up-to-date general plan land use map, but we also had a consistent zoning map, and that makes sure that every single property was consistent, both what was identified through the land use and what was identified through the zoning. So all that's being updated. And I'm going to talk about in a little bit in this presentation some of the changes we made, some reflecting what's on the ground today versus making sure what's consistent in terms of long-term best opportunities for land uses. And as Abraham mentioned, we did the complete general plan update, all of the elements, minus the housing element. Housing element was updated a few years ago. However, starting in a couple of years from now, the next cycle of the housing element is coming. So that's still a few years away. So we didn't want to touch the housing element as it's also certified and been approved by the state. New to the phase 3, and I think it's also important for the community and staff recognize, is historic resource analysis. So a historic architectural resource group was brought in to analyze the city's historic resources. They did a context statement recognizing what were the key historical periods in Downey and how they reflect and shape Downey today. They did a high-level historical assessment to see where there's opportunities for looking at protecting particular districts or properties, but also importantly, preparing an architectural style guideline or guidebook that shows what are the key historic resources and architectural form and architectural design in the city, such as some of the 1950s architecture, and ensuring so when those go through improvements that style is still recognized. And so it helps property owners, architects, and developers recognize some of those key historical architectural types in the city. At a high level, these are all the elements to the general plan. There are 8 now required elements. Environmental justice is still optional for some cities, but other cities they're not. So that's considered the 8 required element. And the environmental justice for this city is a new element. And so we're excited to bring that element forward. There are 2 optional elements that are not necessarily required by the state, but if a community or city decides those topics are important, by all means, the city should adopt those elements, and those are the design and community resources element, and the economic development. City, and those are not new elements; those have been prepared previously. We've updated them, but those are still optional elements, but nonetheless still important. The remaining elements, land use, circulation, safety, noise, conservation, open space, all those have all been updated as part of this update. And we're really looking for the Planning Commission to really look at the land use element. We're excited for you to look at the general plan. We've created a nice document layout, but I think the key thing is really looking at the maps, the context that's been provided, and most importantly, the goals and policies, making sure that they reflect the long-term vision for the city of Downey. And as I mentioned earlier, the land use element, before the general plan comes to public hearing and becomes before this body, really take a look at the land use element, and we look forward to any comments and any additional comments from the Planning Commission on the land use element. But by all means, please look at the entire element itself, or the entire general plan as well. So let's talk about the community engagement process and how we integrated that into the general plan. Part of the engagement process is the Planning Commission as well as other commissions in the city. We want to make sure the Planning Commission provides early insight into the general plan, so we have over a month for review of the document. We also want you to consider public input that's been provided, as I mentioned, focus on land use, but ultimately you'll be providing that recommendation to the city council that ultimately will adopt the general plan, but it does become before this body, as all general plan amendments do. High level in terms of engagement activities, and those are really, for me, those are really exciting just to have a chance to talk to the public. But as you recall, even if we go back, so we had a Planning Commission presentation on the housing element implementation. We had community leader interviews, and I think I've done a lot of those interviews with city council, planning commissioners, and other key city leaders in the community. We did a series of focus groups. And at the Space Center, the Columbia Space Center, we also had an environmental justice workshop, and we really wanted to understand what were some of the community challenges, and understand what are some of those opportunities to improve certain neighborhoods in Downey based on what state law requires for environmental justice. And then we, per state law, we needed to make sure that the zoning implementation occurred by a certain date, and we met that requirement. So there was changes to the zoning text, adding new housing overlays, and as Abraham also mentioned, adopting the objective design standards. That was a little over a year ago, and we had engagement going up to that as well, and that got adopted by the city council. We had an online and paper survey. It had over 800 comments from the community. We had 4 pop-up events, and we went out to the community to make sure not only just having them come to us, but go to them. And we had over 600 touch points. We have all these interactive boards, and we got different feedback from the community, both on land use, density, transportation, environmental justice. We got a series of input from those events at Golden Park. There was a street fair, a touch a truck, and there was a men's wellness fair at Apollo Park. As we prepared the environmental impact report, there is a scoping meeting. We also consulted with the surrounding cities to let them know that we're preparing the EIR. And let's see, there was also, importantly, a few months ago, was a zoning workshop. Let me go back to that. So those pictures there are from the zoning workshop. We had contacted, the city sent out a letter and comment card to quite a few property owners. I want to say it was over 2,000 property owners, and maybe you can tell me later what that was. But we sent out quite a bit comments, letters, and invited them to the public to a zoning public workshop. We had maps. We broke out in the public groups, so you can see city staff really helped to get a lot of input on those zoning map changes and the general plan land use changes that we were proposing to make, and make sure people understood, and property owners, business owners, or even those that were renting on properties, what the changes we were making and what the potential impacts were. And we thought that was a very productive meeting, and no significant, we were able to talk with a lot of property owners and had a really good successful meeting. We had over 60 plus property owners show up at that particular meeting at the community center at Apollo Park. So we've been engaging with the community. And as I mentioned, tomorrow at Apollo Park, or the Columbia, getting all my space terminology mixed up. At the Columbia Memorial Space Center will be our general plan workshop where we introduce the general plan. We'll have a series of stations on the elements, and we're going to allow the public to really listen, take a look at, we'll have draft copies of the document. We summarize a lot of the key elements, and we're going to have an interactive open house style workshop tomorrow. So we do invite you to listen in and if you're available, or at least let your friends and families and neighbors know about this workshop. And the city's been publicizing it through social media. There's been a lot of handouts, and there's flyers at the public notice board about the general plan workshop. As Abraham mentioned, the EIR still has a public review process. Public period it's open for 45 days. It closes on August 20th. Those we will get letters, whether from agencies or anybody that submits a letter. As consultants and by state law, we do have to respond to those letters, specifically if it's specific to the general plan. If they're talking about other stuff, we can still respond. But if it's specific to the EIR, we want to make sure we respond appropriately, particularly from agencies, state agencies, or other governmental agencies. And we're continuing to get input on the general plan. The workshop is a big component, letting people, the Planning Commission, know about the general plan, and that we'll continue to bring in comments all the way up to September. And right now we're working on a comment system where residents or the public can distribute or bring in input through a comment form as well, a digital comment form. And the workshop's a great way to bring in public comments. And then I know the documents are there's some located at City Hall. The actual physical documents, if they can't download it, they'll be able to at least view physical copies of the general plan. And then we're still using digital media, social media, flyers, email distributions to get the word out as well. This is the eye test part of the presentation, but these are just a series of comments we heard from the public, ranging from various topic areas. We've had, as I mentioned, more than several thousand comments from the public as we started to update the general plan. We organized, we've identified some of the key comments, and we responded to those comments in the general plan, either through policies, through map changes. So some of the example here, promoting townhouse development, housing for younger residents and smaller families, bike accessibility, downtown vibrancy. We address those through different policies about providing housing opportunities, mixed-use development, flexibility for businesses, and implementing complete streets, meaning you design streets for multiple modes, not just for one type of mode. So you don't just design streets for bikes or just for cars only. There's sidewalks and bicycle lanes and street lanes. And so you look at it at a holistic approach. So the state calls that a complete street approach to designing streets. Other types of comments we got were improving pedestrian realm, more public gathering spaces, and pedestrian realm meaning improvements to connectivity on sidewalks, intersections, crosswalks. Economic development still highlights some of the key things that's important to Downey: tourism, hospitality, as well as healthcare, and then design and the historic resources components, improving those public spaces, the streetscapes in the community, and protecting historic resources. Let's get into the land use map changes as well as the related zoning map changes. So we recognize that the city has been updating the land use map, but it hadn't taken a comprehensive look to the update for quite a while. So we worked with staff, and staff worked really hard, both with our land use planners and city staff, in making sure what land use changes made sense to recognize long-term value of the properties going forward. One of the key things we did was making sure not only just to have those land use reflect what's on the ground, if that site made sense, if there is an existing use, let's say for an example, a commercial center, but the land use showed it as residential. If it made sense to maintain it as a commercial center, we changed it to a commercial center. And that's just an example, not saying that's what we did, but there might be some examples of that, or vice versa. So we really looked at what was that long-term use of the land, but also recognize what are some of the existing uses on the ground. So there's a lot of determination on what to move forward in terms of land use. But most importantly, we also make sure that the general plan land use and the zoning map were consistent. It's a requirement by state law, but it's very easy out of the thousands and thousands of parcels to maybe have one that doesn't necessarily reflect one or the other. And over time, that makes it a challenge from a property owner. Am I following the land use? Am I following the zoning? And sometimes the land use doesn't keep up with the zoning, or the zoning doesn't keep up with the land use. So we use this opportunity to make sure that we're all on the same page. We also looked at current and anticipated housing demand. And that was reflected in some of the land use changes, but as well as some of the market conditions. We recognize the market showed limited growth here and there in terms of industrial or office, but there were still opportunities for some commercial or some other types of uses, and we wanted to make sure we reflected that. We also wanted to make sure we reflected a lot of the projects that already have been approved by the city over time. So some of the specific plans, we know that there were some other development projects already approved, and we made sure that those are reflected in the land use and the zoning map as well. So again, as I mentioned, we wanted to make sure and this is basically what I said earlier, is just aligning the land use and zoning to reflect the long established use of the property, but also get to support flexibility on some of the corridors. So we applied mixed use and some of the overlays that still allows the commercial uses, but allows that housing opportunities on some of the corridors, and expanded a little bit. We call them fill in the gaps, but just a little bit beyond what was proposed in the housing element. We've added some other opportunity areas as well, but very limited. We've updated the land use categories. We addressed the housing overlays. We adjusted some of the terminology. We went from general manufacturing, and we've added a light industrial and turned general manufacturing into industrial categories. Keep in mind, the zoning still provides all those uses. So like the example previously about a tutoring center in a use zone, in a commercial use zone, the zoning still dictates a lot of the types of uses, but the general plan provides that higher level types of uses. So keep in mind, general plan, higher level zoning is going to provide that detail. We've also updated the public institution section. We merged a lot of the schools, public, private schools, non-school uses into one general public institutional category. And we made sure we brought in the housing element overlays and introduced the specific plan designation as well. So if you look at this map, you'll see, oh my goodness, look at all these changes. What you do see is you see a lot of the public commercial, the public institutional changes. Those were 3 different types of public uses in the previous general plan, so we simplified it. So all those, I would say kind of a tealish bluish green, all the big schools, those are already publics before. We just changed the naming and merged them together to simplify it in the general plan. And I'll talk about what we did in the zoning. We introduced the specific plans in gray, but a lot of minor changes on some of the corridors, and I'll go into some details on what those included, which is in this map here. So you can see in some areas, and again, this is just kind of a snippet of all the changes. This doesn't explain all the changes we made, but gives an example of some of the key changes. So for the one at the top that says change to reflect current uses, we addressed some of the housing element and zoning maps. We adjusted the open space and public facilities as we move around clockwise, specific plan areas. Going back to the other side, we changed to reflect current uses like on Telegraph, expanded the housing overlay, changed to reflect current uses along Imperial. And again, there's some areas where we did zoning consistencies changes to make sure it was consistent with the zoning map. There are spaces, there are properties where we changed the zoning to make sure it was consistent with the land use. So when we make all of those changes, part of what the EIR does is what is the capacity of future housing development over the next 20 years? Keep in mind, this general plan is designed to look at growth over the next 20 years. So it's not, hey, this is going to happen next 5 years. The housing element, however, looked at the cycle, when you looked at the housing element, it's at 2021 to 2029. That's the 8-year cycle, and that provided so many units. The general plan has to make sure it accommodates those units, but then look at the next 12 years after that. So looking at a full 20 years. So currently, today, there's about 37,000 housing units. With this general plan, we're looking at roughly an additional 10,000 housing units over the next 20 years. Keep in mind, about 43% of that 10,000 was already approved by the housing element through the zoning. The general plan's kind of just catching up. And so those were all previously updated through the zoning the zoning changes last year. The general plan looks at another 5,900 additional units on those corridors, but a large proportion of those units are also ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We had to make sure we integrated. That's a realistic growth, and that's what the state's allowing for additional housing ADUs. I know there's some challenges with the community and with parking and so forth, but we still needed to realize what that number of units over the next 20 years could be. So a portion of that 59 is, I'd say less than half is ADU units, and then a little bit of growth areas, some fixes that we made. And we'll see how many units of those get built over the next 20 years. It may be a portion of it, we may not get close to it, or there may be some of it. Either way, the environmental impact had looked at the analysis for all 10,350 units. So keep in mind, again, that's a 20-year horizon for all those units. And I think the number there is approximately about 22% additional units. The other thing too is we recognize that that housing element, the next housing element is coming up. It's still a few years away. We think that number will easily, we don't suspect a lot of major changes as part of that next housing element, so that'll help accommodate the next round as well. Not only did we look at housing units, but we also looked at non-residential capacity, meaning building square footage for commercial, industrial, and office. This is a big number, 30 million square feet existing. We were able to analyze that data. And the general plan looks at probably about 2.6 million additional square footage, but 80% of it has been approved as part of specific plans that have their own EIRs, or the recent logistics building has like 600,000 square feet. That's included in that 2 million. So the general plan is only looking at about 500,000 additional square footage. A lot of it's redevelopment, potentially through mixed use or some commercial development. And keep in mind, that's also a 20-year period. And so that's about an 8% increase there. Let's briefly jump into the zoning. The zoning looks very similar to the land use map.
If I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a question comes up because I may forget it later on.
Sure.
Adding these percentages for the next 20 years, is there any consideration for parking spaces above or below ground? So that way they won't be, because you're adding additional, 2 million square feet of businesses, they will need space to park. You add additional residential, they will need space to park.
Correct.
So what we can control is basically the commercial side, where you can make these businesses put a parking space or parking structure for that matter, so that way they don't park on the street. Was there any consideration of that?
Yes. Well, one is we're not changing the municipal code and the parking requirements. So commercial development, as you saw, with the Tudor Center, still had some parking requirements. They had an existing parking lot, so it met that requirement. But if there's intensification or for particular use, take a look at the municipal code and the parking requirements. That yields what that either net parking would need, whether they need to do a structured parking. The municipal code still dictates the number of units or the number of parking spaces per square footage, and we did not make any changes to that. But we did look at, we recognize that through community engagement that parking was has been a community challenge. So we do have some parking strategies to look at through when the city starts to look at implementation measures, how to address some of the parking issues in certain areas. There's different parking approaches. Now this is the non-commercial part, whether it's in residential areas or spillover from commercial areas. There's definitely some policies and there's some language in the circulation element that talks about parking, but we're not changing, as part of this project, we're not changing the requirements for spaces per number of parking spaces per commercial type uses. Great. I'm going to go through the zoning part really quickly. It mirrors a lot of the land use changes. But one thing I want to point out, you see, is there's a lot of public facilities and open space zoning uses that we made changes. That's because the zoning map originally called all of the schools and parks as a residential use. So we cleaned that up. Again, it's consistency with the land use. The land use already had called out public uses, schools, the civic center as public uses. We changed it in the zoning so it's no longer a residential use. So if the school decides to change their use, they have to do a general plan or zoning amendment, and not just build R1 single family homes. We really worked with staff. We did some online mapping to look at all the properties and both from the current general plan and zoning map changes. So we had some interactive maps to show that. In the community workshop where we looked at the zoning and general plan changes, we had specific comments from the community, and we worked with staff to look at it, addressing those as well, and whether we needed to adjust those, but also just provide that information to property owners so that they understand what those zoning changes meant. And a lot of times when we talked with them, there was really no impacts to them. It's just that learning opportunity, what that zoning change meant to them. This is also showing all the different land use comments from the community itself as well. All right, and to wrap up the presentation, steps to adoption, and kind of repeating what I said earlier, EIR public comments go up to August 20th. We're getting general plan comments through September, and if there's specific comments that you have already, feel free to connect with city staff. Public open house tomorrow. The Planning Commission public hearing starts on October 7th. So we'll be back here on October 7th. We're a little bit over a month away, exactly 1 month away, for the public hearings to start. And then later in the month, the City Council adoption process will start. So how to comment, as I mentioned, make an appointment with planning staff. You can attend the workshop tomorrow, the open house. Take notes on the general plan, EIR hearings. For the public, that's the Planning Commission. For public, attending the public house, public open house, visiting the website. There'll be ways to comment on the general plan, talking with city staff, and attending all the hearings and meetings. The general plan website, the city's been doing a great job updating and putting all the information. The workshop summaries are on the general plan webpage on the city's website, and we're having Abraham as our key contact person for any comments on the general plan. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. That was a very good summary, going back to 2024 to the present.
Correct.
Thank you for doing that. Does anyone have any questions of Jose at this time? Okay.
I have one. It's regarding the Downey link. Oops, I'm sorry. Regarding our Downey link, our buses.
Correct.
I'm just wondering, through our community outreach, as you're going through our general plan upgrade, what has been the general consensus of our residents as far as the link? Is there a high demand for the link? Is there any changes as far as the way it's operating and moving forward for the next 20 years?
We had some comments about transit and mobility through the workshop. There wasn't nothing that stood out to me specifically about changes or demand, but we did talk with city staff about the Downey link, and we continue to include policies to support that type of transit in the city. But in terms of specific comments, there may be maybe a couple of verbatim comments on it, but nothing that I call that really stood out.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And one last one that I wrote. I'm sure you work with other cities, Jose, right? How does our general plan now moving forward for the next 20 years, how does it compare to other projects, other cities? Is there anything that other cities have done that maybe we didn't capture that you would have maybe perhaps brought to the table that other cities are doing that's just unique or just outside the box?
Oh, that's a good question. I've done probably 20 plus general plans, and I've done a lot of them in the gateway cities area. And you know what? Every city's different. We don't just do the general plans and kind of replicate them. A lot of cities have different types of different challenges, and they're totally different. Neighboring cities are completely different. Some are very industrial based with a small, residential population, and a lot of them are more suburban type communities with corridors similar to Downey. What we've done here is making sure that the general plan meets all of current state law. We definitely did that. It hasn't been updated in a while, so there is definitely reviewing of all the goals and policies that are important. But I think also important for staff is making sure the feasibility over the long term, goals and policy, but some of the implementation measures, what's feasible for the city in the short term, what's feasible in the long term, and providing that flexibility so that staff can pivot as market condition changes. So that's in the general plan. But I think what I really enjoy about this general plan is the kind of easy to, very friendly graphics for the community to digest. And I think the next step is the implementation part. I know down the road opportunities for how to improve certain areas for tree canopies, parks improvements, and then start to pursue those grants so that the general plan can help with those as well. So it's kind of hard to compare. There's so many different fruits from general plans, but we're excited about this one.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have one more question, Jose, if you don't mind. Yeah. You mentioned earlier regarding the public meetings and how the public wanted certain things, certain improvements and what have you. So how is the environmental justice and the feedback you get from the public and the land use kind of work together?
No, that's a great question. So the environmental justice element has quite a few layers. One is we really look at the existing conditions, and there's what's called a Cal Enviro Screen, which is an analysis done by the state at a tract level that identifies the different pollution sources and the different socioeconomic characteristics of the community. So it takes a look at that and it shows what areas have high pollution burdens, and the pollution burdens can vary from potential for water quality degradation to regional air pollution issues from the freeways as well as just from truck traffic and so forth. So we analyze that at that level. We also make sure that we're hearing from the public, because part of the state law requirements asks us to do is how come those areas that has been labeled as, if you go through the element, they're called disadvantaged communities. That's what the state calls them. Not that they have disadvantages, but disadvantages in terms of it's been labeled that because there's some high pollution burdens. An example would be the aerospace area. There had been some contamination on the ground. Some's been cleaned up. Some of it's been make sure that it's taped off so that there's no issues. But the state puts that at a higher level, so some of the neighborhoods in that area will score higher. So what we did was we looked at goals and policies to address some of those issues, but also areas along the freeways. How can we, if there's a need for central air filtering, for more tree canopies for air filtering. How can we reduce some of the truck impacts from idling? There's some idling policies to reduce idling and push towards electrification. There's a series of things that the city can do. And then just to finish it off, the other levels are looking at access to parks. Physical activity, community engagement is important, particularly for those neighborhoods where if there's changes or planning changes in those areas, access to healthy foods, and then reducing pollution burdens. It's a complex element. I think we did a good job looking at goals and policies and understanding what those challenges are. and how to address them in the future. So I don't know if I kind of hit a lot of areas on the environmental justice element. I hope I answered some of those questions that you had, but if there's any follow-up, I'm happy to answer those.
That's good, thank you. I have one more, I'm sorry, I just thought about one last one. To my colleagues' comment earlier regarding parking, right, because of the ADUs and the increased amount of people moving into the city, and every family has multiple vehicles, and we all feel it on Firestone and Florence, Paramount, and all the major intersections. How much consideration have we really taken into what it would look like 20 years from now, even with more vehicles, more ADUs, more and more vehicles, right? And going back to the Downey link, I've had a few community members asked me to bring that up. Maybe this is the right time or not, staff, to maybe look into the size of those buses and how much are they really being used, and what would it look like 20 years from now if they're still trying to make a right or left on the intersection with a lot more vehicles and a lot more traffic.
There is policies to look at long-term changes for parking. So I definitely take a look at the circulation element. And if there's something that you feel like is missing, or we need to augment or revise, we'll definitely take a look at it. But eventually there is some implementation measures as well on what are some approaches to address those. Every city right now is addressing, even in my neighborhood, about additional, and it's not even necessarily ADUs, it's also cost of housing. You have different generations continuing to live in the house, and it's expensive for younger generations, like even coming back from college. And so there's different approaches to address parking. And obviously transit is still continues to be very, very important. So there's a whole transit section, pedestrian, bicycling, there's all those sections to improve those particular sections. It's still going to be hard to get cars off the road. There's no doubt about that. And so moving forward, how do we manage that? So there's definitely policies to look at that. And then down the road, there's studies that can be done by traffic consultants to look at parking, to augment different or local transit, and how those can be improved. And that could be included as part of long-range implementation measures that additional analysis needs to be made. And I know we've included some of those already.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Okay, seeing none. Go ahead, you want to say something? Sure.
Yes, Chair, thank you, Jose. I really, really appreciate that you've kept with us and the city team throughout the entire process. And there's a whole team behind MIG, from mapping services to analysts, graphic folks, that have helped Downey reach to this point where we haven't updated our general plan in over 20 years. And it's, I think, an honor for a lot of us to be part of this engagement process with the community, to be able to present finally a draft that we can talk about, that's tangible, that we can reference. So thank you to Jose and MIG and the city staff. To add a little more context to a couple of the questions by the commission, how this general plan relates to how we would compare maybe to other cities, I echo Jose's comments that a general plan needs to be customized to the community. There isn't a template or a one-size-fits-all, but one of the large parts of the starting process of the general plan is to look at best practices from other cities and see how topics are being addressed and what are the trending topics that staff is dealing with regards to their respective areas, in regards to parks or transportation or public works. And this is where we, maybe we didn't highlight here, but I think we'll include in future presentations, is that we had an interdepartmental working group as well from various departments that included managers, directors, folks at different staff levels, that were also able to provide input on the day-to-day operations of the city and how some of those topics relate to the more larger framework of policies of the general plan. The general plan doesn't go into detail of the operations of what plant material is being selected or exactly what height a building will be or how many parking stalls. That's more zoning code, or that is a programmatic level. The general plan touches on, is it important for the city to have shaded walking areas, for example? And that's where we talk about tree canopies and pedestrian-friendly walkways. And so that is then translated into a policy of that general plan. So there was a lot of work that went into looking at best practices of other cities, of other general plans, and then the practical point of view of staff as practitioners, engineers, managers of our Parks and Recreation, of the library. We had a whole array of a larger group meeting together at the Carmack room at the library to individualized stakeholder meetings with our own staff based on topics. And so that is part of what MIG and our city staff did in preparation to addressing these policies. So I just wanted to make sure that to provide that additional context on that. And something else that was important to city staff and was to make sure that this general plan, because it hasn't been updated for so long, that really reflected and that the community was part of the development of the general plan. And so you saw that large timeline dating back from 2024 where we've had community engagement. What we didn't want to happen, sometimes we have to look at where we don't want to be so we don't end up there, is what we didn't want to be is be at an adoption of a document that's this important to Downey and people be questioning, why didn't we hear about it? Why could I have said this? Could I have said that? And so it was really important for us to not just have a meeting here at City Hall and come to us. We went to the parks. We went to the community events. We were at National Night Out last night. So we were going to community events, talking about what the general plan is and trying to break it down because it is a very dense topic and it doesn't have a tangible plan to show it. We're not showing a building, we're not showing a park, we're talking about feelings of how you want your community to feel, how you want your community to, what you want to experience when you go to your neighborhood. And so all of those things were important to us when we were developing this general plan. And it's been a journey for me personally as the director to be part of this. And I would say truly an honor because not many staff teams get to be part of a general plan update and see it come to an end. And I was just sharing with Jose before the Planning Commission meeting and thanking him for being here because I told him it's full circle. He was part of the stakeholder meetings back in 2024 and here he's back presenting and telling us where we are again. And we've had other touch points with MIG and this body and the City Council. So again, providing that context, also with regard to disadvantaged communities and community outreach. One of the reasons that early on we decided to have our first workshop about the general plan, an environmental justice workshop at the Columbia Space Center, is because when we mapped the city, that was one of the areas that is categorized as a low resource area. And again, all the factors that Jose mentioned, and there's many, many more factors about what how the state categorizes a low resource environmental justice labeled area. But it was important for us to take a look at where we were at that point. And again, it was a good starting point for us to reflect on how do we engage in the community and not make them come to us, but we go to them. So that was our first experience of customizing the general plan process for the community and not for our convenience. The other part is we've included materials in English and Spanish because that is a prominent secondary language in our community. And that's something that the state is also looking at when cities have adopted general plans. They're looking at how did a city end up with the adoption of the general plan and does it really reflect the community and did the community have an opportunity to provide input? And so that's always been in our minds from the beginning. And I think those are the main topics that I wanted to cover, but again, it's been a long process, so there's a lot in our minds. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and congratulations to the planning team. And again, special thanks to Abraham. I mentioned to Chair Uva before today's meeting that Abraham has been part of the general plan update since the beginning, and he's continuing to be the lead project planner for the City of Downey and coordinating the day-to-day interactions with MIG and Jose and their staff. So it really does take a village to help support, bring this such a large document to the commission and ultimate to the city council. And so Abraham and the rest of the team that's always here to support each other, it really is an honor for us to be able to be here today at this point with the draft general plan. Thank you.
And how long has it been at work?
Excuse me?
How long has it been preparing for this general plan?
The general plan, well, we technically started the process for this in 2024, but we only entered into the general plan update in 2025. The precursors to the general plan document that you actually have a binder for were the adoption of the housing overlay zones to meet our RENA allocation, and that's already been completed. It came to this body and approved by the City Council, and the precursor to the general plan was also the adoption of the objective design standards, and that was city staff and MIG working on that. That's been completed. So we're on our third and ideally final phase of the general plan update, culminating in the adoption coming to this body as a recommending item to the City Council on October 7th, and by the 27th, it'll be before the City Council for adoption.
Question on October 7th, are we going to accept or adopt, or are we going just to review it for the first time and it's going to go to the council, or how's that going to work?
I'll let Jose take that one.
Wait, I want to make sure I understand. You mean
On October 7th, next planning commission meeting, are we supposed to accept and adopt the general plan that you prepared for the last 2.5 years?
So the public release of the general plan is available now, so definitely take a look at it. You need to consider it. We will make that recommendation for adoption to the City Council, but as a standalone body, you get to consider and take a look at the body and the document itself, and then provide comments, recommendations, changes, and those have to be recommended to the City Council.
Yes, for additional clarity, yes, that is staff's intent. We're conducting an extensive engagement with the community and a touch point with the Planning Commission even before today, and providing you drafts of the general plan so that we can meet with you, answer questions. This is technically the public comment period for the general plan, and that includes any comments from any staff members, from commissioners, anyone in the community. So if we were to receive a comment, staff still has an opportunity to look at, does the general plan draft currently address it? Or is there an opportunity now to address and modify anything in the draft general plan to address the public comment? And so ideally by October 7th, we would have received the majority of substantive comments, those comments addressed in the draft general plan that's presented to the Planning Commission. Staff does intend to bring the item as a recommendation to approve to the City Council the adoption of the general plan. So it is important for staff to make sure that as a commission you are comfortable with the material by that day, and that's why in the screen we did have opportunity and encouraging that you as commissioners reach out to you, and we're going to reach out to you again to make appointments to come meet with us. We can come to you and we can answer any questions and address any comments that you may have.
Just a comment, this general plan, the additional subject that was added by the state to the environmental justice, this is a very sensitive topic, and is difficult to address. How you're going to manage to alleviate a lot of these issues as presented in the booklet that you gave us, dropped off in our house. So we may have some questions on that specific topics. There might be some, how are you going to do this? How are you going to address this issue? Was there an issue before? There's a lot of points out, a lot of points you put on in that booklet that should be addressed, or how to be addressed. And it may take a little bit more time. So I'm assuming October 7th is not a drop deadline, is it?
It is a target date. We gave actually this presentation to the city council a few weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, and it is staff's intent to address as many comments as possible and answer questions to these, like I said, dense, really heavy topics in advance of the October 7th meeting. The October 7th meeting is not intended to be a working session where we're amending sections of the general plan. That's why we would like, and it sounds like maybe we'll reach out to you to have a meeting about environmental justice and maybe other topics, and we can have the subject matter expert, Jose, who's very well-versed in environmental justice, along with city staff. But just to give you some highlights about environmental justice, the environmental justice mandates by the state is not that we solve and we eliminate all the low resource or the disadvantages that have been categorized this area, but rather establish policies that over time will help alleviate, but there is no intent or mandate that the city solve them in their absolute by the conclusion of the 20-year period. So for example, in an open space element, there's existing policies currently in our current general plan, and even stronger policies in our draft general plan to increase the tree canopies in public right-of-ways to create more shade, and that is intended to increase the pedestrian experience to be able to go to school and do daily activities, and also to reduce the heat island effect and other things that are would make that a more desirable place. Another example is a disadvantaged community, for example, maybe doesn't have close proximity to a full service grocery store, maybe just convenience stores. And not having service to a full grocery store like a typical Albertsons or a Stater Brothers is a contributor to a low resource area. So in a land use element, we can ensure that we have a general plan designations of general commercial, which is the land use designation that's necessary in order for a grocery store to be able to come in and have the appropriate zoning to be able to establish there. So if an area, for example, doesn't have any general commercial areas, then city staff would be looking at, well, we probably need to create opportunities for that. I'm not saying that's happening in Downey, but I want to give you examples of how those policies translate into the general plan and how those policies are setting the stage to alleviate some of those, and I have a little list of environmental justice because I suspected there was going to be questions about environmental justice. Another example that I can bring up is schools. And sometimes, and this is also my previous jurisdiction where I dealt with, there was disadvantaged areas that had been newly developed and didn't have schools yet zoned general plan designation. So in some areas, it's necessary to ensure that there's appropriate zoning so that it can facilitate daycares and schools and other needs that families may need to be able to have a well-rounded neighborhood. So again, my long answer of saying more than happy to dive into those topics because you're correct. At the dais, it's very hard for us to get into very granular examples of how these policies translate to alleviating the environmental justice issues.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I just want to say thank you to staff for their amazing work. Endless hours I know that you all have spent on this, and in addition to this, you had other city business and things to attend to. So we commend you on this. It's a huge undertaking, and we're almost there. Thank you so much. Irma, do you have any other additional comments unrelated to, or just
I'll
comments?
repeat myself because this is a very important, that the Planning Commission meeting of the October 7th, we do intend to have the general plan here, so if you can mark your calendars for that. And also, planning staff has confirmed to me that we do have Planning Commission items for August 19th, and also for the first meeting in September. So we do have agenda items coming up. So if we have any changes, we'll be sure to email you and update you, but just want to make sure that you have it on your calendars.
Okay.
On the event, we have any comments, can we just like sometime email them to you or to
We
Abraham?
can email them to me, but Abraham is our point of contact, so both of us.
Okay.
And we will follow up with you and everyone to set up appointments at a convenient time that works for your work schedules or your daily lives, because I know you're busy too.
And then just for the public record, for if anyone's watching on YouTube or anything, what time is the public engagement tomorrow? From what to what?
So tomorrow, the open house at Columbia Space starts at 6 p.m. to 7:30.
So 6 to 7:30 at the
correct.
Columbia Space Center.
And it is open house style, so you come anytime between those hours.
Okay, great. And I think Commissioner Legaspi has a comment.
Quick question and a comment. When was the last time we updated our general plan? What year was it?
It'll be in 2005.
2005 was the
Correct.
last one. So, okay, so we're there. It's about 20 years ago. And the comment I just wanted to make really quickly from our last meeting when we were all together, we ended that session pretty late, maybe 12-ish, 1-ish. And I'm not sure 1 o'clock, Director, I'm not sure we thanked staff enough that day. I think we were all pretty beat and we were all ready to just go home to our families. But I thank you. Everyone was wonderful. We had lots of staff on both sides of the dais, and especially to Director Huitron and Attorney Funk. There was a lot of questions, a lot thrown at both of you, and you both handled yourself very well. So thank you. I think everyone would agree
I'll concur,
we're
yes.
blessed to have you as staff. Thank you.
All right, so I think then we are adjourned at 7:52.